Adrian, and today we're taking an in-depth look at the Punisher's fighting style in his Netflix adaptation. Frank Castle, also known as the Punisher, made his debut on Netflix in Season 2 of Daredevil and went on to star in his own series that currently has 2 seasons. The state of the Punisher series itself is currently unknown as of the making of this video, but what is known is that Frank Castle is in some of the most brutal fight scenes ever and has no reservations about killing his enemies. This episode of Fighting Styles has been one of the most highly requested ones, and although I do assume that most of you have seen Daredevil Season 2 as well as Punisher Seasons 1 and 2, I will be very light on the details surrounding the series and instead focus only on the martial arts at hand. In other words, there won't be any spoilers if you don't pay too much attention to who the Punisher is currently beating up. If you're a fan of action films, I highly recommend subscribing to my channel and watching my feature film Soul Hunters. It just premiered on Amazon and features great fight sequences, an interesting plot involving an ex-Special Forces agent collecting souls for a demon, and really cool visual effects. You can find out more in the description below or by going to soulhuntersmovie.com. But today, we will be focusing exclusively on the Punisher. The goal of these videos is to figure out just how many fighting styles our combatant is familiar with by analyzing the specific moves featured in their films or series and pairing them with the martial art or fighting style which most aptly represents those moves. There is a huge amount of crossover in martial arts techniques, and a technique that is present in one fighting style may also be present in another, such as a roundhouse kick being present in multiple martial arts. But in order to not give combatants multiple fighting styles for the sake of variety, I have instead opted to list the most apt fighting style that best represents that particular technique or set of techniques. This video will analyze the fight scenes featured in Daredevil Season 2 and the Punisher Seasons 1 and 2. Fighting styles that the Punisher may know in the comics or any other form of media do not count. Without further ado, let's take a look at how many fighting styles the Punisher knows in the Netflix series. Something that severely impacts this analysis is the background of Frank Castle, and that is the fact that he's a full-fledged former member of the United States Marine Corps. The US Marines are a branch of the United States Armed Forces and are responsible for conducting expeditionary and amphibious operations. They are part of the 4 armed service branches in the US Department of Defense and are extremely well trained. Being a Marine is truly an exceptional achievement, and this undoubtedly plays a role in why they are the smallest US military service within the Department of Defense. An integral part of the training and being a Marine is its martial arts component. The training history of this branch has changed throughout the years, but what is currently being taught to recruits is a system called the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, or MCMAP for short. According to their official mission statement, it's a whole Marine program, which emphasizes the complete development of a professional warrior. It's designed to improve the warfighting capability of individual Marines and units. It's not a sport, but a specifically designed, distinctively weapons-based system. And with that, if you've seen my Solid Snake Fighting Styles episode, you can probably gather that the program is a real-world CQC system, or Close Quarters Combat System. CQC is a tactical concept that involves physical confrontation between several combatants, usually of small units engaging the enemy with personal weapons at a short range. It has a huge emphasis in dealing with weapons in the battlefield, as you will rarely run into the instance of facing an enemy that has no weapons at its disposition. However, I want to make it very clear that the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program is in fact a real CQC system, while the one that Snake uses in the video game series Metal Gear Solid is a fictitious style inspired by several real martial arts created entirely by the military advisor of the game Motosada Mori. If you'd like to find out more about it, you're more than welcome to see my Solid Snake Fighting Styles video. As such, returning to the Punisher, the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program will officially count as a fighting style, since it's real and not fictitious, like Snake's CQC or Spider-Man's The Way of the Spider. So let's explore this real-world CQC system with even more detail. One of the most important components of a CQC system are the martial arts it draws from. For example, Krav Maga, a CQC system developed for the Israeli Defense Forces, draws heavily from martial arts such as boxing and Muay Thai. The Marine Corps Martial Arts Program draws a huge amount of influences from various martial arts we've seen on fighting styles, such as boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Muay Thai, Karate, Taekwondo, and even Krav Maga itself, among many others. In the program, like in traditional martial arts, there's also a belt ranking system that goes from a tan color, the lowest possible ranking, to black belt. The black belt can be achieved with 40 hours of supervised training, and also has up to 6 degrees, or dans, if you want to use traditional martial arts terminology. The belts each have a variety of techniques underneath them, including striking techniques, throwing techniques, knife techniques, bayonet techniques, chokes, restraints, ground fighting, joint manipulation, disarms, pressure points, and many others. Furthermore, there's a large emphasis placed in using said techniques with real-world situations. In other words, they not only learn to execute said techniques in a controlled environment, but in situations that are meant to simulate real-world combat stress. To replicate this, the Marines will typically train in rain, mud, water, low lighting conditions, 100-degree heat, and even with pepper spray being used on them. So now that we have a basic understanding of what's going on with this style, let's take a look at how the Punisher puts all these concepts into practice. Learning how to take a fight to the ground is a crucial skill for military personnel. Not only does it give you an opportunity to catch your opponent off guard, it usually frees you up for an endless barrage of attacks. So as it would be expected, Frank will routinely take the fight to the ground every chance he gets. His favorite move is known as a double leg takedown in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You accomplish it by driving your shoulder into your opponent's waist, taking special care to go for the leading leg as you risk yourself getting kneed in the face otherwise, and then immediately hooking your hands underneath the opponent's knees in order to pull upwards while using your shoulder to drive him backwards and onto the ground. It's an effective technique, and if your opponent isn't ready for it, he could seriously injure himself when his head hits the ground. And if it's not over, the Punisher really enjoys wailing on his opponent on the ground by using his bare fists or anything he happens to be holding at the moment. The Punisher also frequently finds himself in situations where he's being attacked by knives or other melee weapons, and he is relentlessly skilled in not only using them, but disarming them. He knows a variety of different disarms that show influences from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well as Krav Maga. For example, when going for the knife disarm, what he usually does is avoid the incoming attack and then redirect the knife to a much less lethal position. Whenever he stabs or slashes, he usually aims for extremely weak areas in the body, be it the throat, the gut, or even the legs. All this points directly to the knife and melee weapons training that he undoubtedly had in the Marine Corps martial arts program. The Punisher is also very skilled in shooting a variety of weapons, including submachine guns, shotguns, assault rifles, sniper rifles, and pistols, denoting his expertise in combat shooting. As you all have seen before, combat shooting is very similar to action shooting in that competitors go from target to target trying to be as accurate as possible. His skill in combat shooting goes double for Frank, since he actually was a Marine. The United States Marine Corps uses their stages as ways to train for things like long-range accuracy, movement, and transitioning between guns. I'm including firearms training as a fighting style because it forms a crucial part of his survival on the battlefield. Most of the guys he goes up against are firing weapons at him, so for him to fight back, he needs to use his firearms. And not only does he use his firearms as projectile weapons, but he uses them as melee weapons as well. Notice how he uses a firearm to strike at his enemies. In this particular case, this is known as a horizontal butt stroke in the Marine Corps martial arts program. It's a close-range strike designed to knock the opponent off balance. It's thrown like a hook in boxing. The technique is performed by stepping in close to the opponent with the rifle held in both hands, then twisting the torso to drive the butt of the weapon in an arc towards the opponent. And as to be expected, he's not only skilled in using firearms, but he's very talented when it comes to disarming them. Once again, these disarms show heavy influences from Krav Maga and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Notice how they all work by applying pressure or leverage to the joints and then exploiting any weak point to make the user have no choice but to let go of the gun or have the gun pointed at a direction where it's no longer a threat. Many of these principles carry over to hand-to-hand fighting as well. For example, this guy thinks he has a great hold on Frank, but all Frank does to counterattack it is to go for the guy's elbow joints. By striking them, he naturally causes the grip to relax by causing the elbow to bend, freeing him up for a follow-up attack. As far as the Punisher's hand-to-hand skills go, he has all the basics covered. He knows how to throw really great hooks and crosses that definitely show the boxing influence in the Marine Corps martial arts program, and also throws other kinds of hand strikes such as a back fist right here, and is no stranger to using elbows whenever he doesn't have the room to extend the full punch, no doubt showing the karate and Muay Thai influence that the Marine Corps martial arts program has. The Punisher also knows how to execute a decent variety of excellent judo throws that are of course heavily modified to suit his own brutal style. For a breakdown of many of these throws and takedowns, I highly suggest you check out the Fighting Styles videos of John Wick and Solid Snake. Frank also knows a variety of chokeholds as well. For example, this one right here is your standard rear naked choke, or hadakajime. An important part of this hold is lining up your elbow exactly with the opponent's throat. This enables you to effectively put the neck right between your bicep and forearm. Once you squeeze, your bicep and forearm are pressing right up against the carotid arteries on your neck. You then can use the other arm to further lock in the choke. This choke prevents blood flow to the head, and that leads to your opponent passing out. This is why it's known as a blood choke. He also uses a variation of the kata hajime, or single wing strangle right here, where if you notice the neck is locked in and the opponent's arm is up. But the technique isn't quite secure since he wants to keep his arms semi-free for the next attacker. These techniques make an appearance in arts such as judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu or Jujutsu. He also demonstrates a very famous choke that is routinely seen in wrestling, pro wrestling, and judo among many other arts, and that is a guillotine choke, or mai hadakajime. It's a great technique because you're basically trapping your opponent's neck in between your bicep and forearm, and are able to use your other arm and whole body to add in extra strength. We've practiced this technique in Jiu-Jitsu class, and trust me, if done correctly, you need to tap out practically immediately to avoid passing out. kicks are a fantastic tool to have in your arsenal, as various other fighters in the series have demonstrated, including Captain America, Daredevil, and Blade. They are much stronger than any punch you could throw, considering that your leg has much more muscle mass than your arm, and can easily knock out an opponent if it lands on the head. However, they do require an extremely high level of speed and flexibility, and if you don't land it, you risk yourself to several counterattacks that knock you off balance or can even break your leg in some instances. So to get the benefits of landing a kick without the drawbacks of getting it countered, you do what Frank does. You kick low and avoid targeting any area above the waist. They can be low side kicks, low front kicks, or just plain quick knee strikes. These kicks are seen in arts including Taekwondo, Karate, and Muay Thai, and work perfectly for the Marine Corps martial arts program. And if you do want to kick above the waist, well, you could always go for a push kick! Yes, the famous push kick, which even recently received its own full tribute video. An interesting thing to point out is that when Frank goes up against this extremely strong bodybuilder, many attacks that should work on him don't. When the Punisher tries to counter his one-arm choke by using the same move he did on the other guy, it just doesn't work. The guy is too strong and maintains the choke perfectly. When he tries to do a push kick on him, the guy barely even moves. He just takes it head on. Furthermore, when Frank locks him in with a guillotine choke, the bodybuilder just laughs it off and immediately counterattacks it by lifting him up and slamming him on the ground. So how does Frank win this fight? By using a very important element in the Marine Corps martial arts program, and that is using an improvised weapon or weapons of opportunity. Remember that a weapon doesn't necessarily have to be a knife or a gun. It can be virtually anything if you have the right skills and know-how. As a matter of fact, the Marines have a saying, which is one mind, any weapon. And Frank absolutely embraces this mindset. Throughout his various fights, he's used a mallet, dumbbells, weight discs, glass shards, containers, and even a bathroom sink. If his brutal hand-to-hand skills aren't enough to win the fight, he will use anything that's in the environment to help him out. He will use those weapons of opportunity without question. What should also be mentioned is that although the Punisher is not much of a guy for subtlety, frequently turning any place he's in into a chaotic gunfight or fistfight, he knows that sometimes he needs to avoid detection, even if it is for a bit. And although I usually attribute this to Shinobi Iri, one of the many disciplines of ninjutsu, in this case, this is no doubt incorporated into his Marine training. So in conclusion, how many fighting styles does the Punisher know? They are the Marine Corps martial arts program and combat shooting, for a grand total of 2 fighting styles. I'd like to thank each one of my Patreon members, as their contribution helped in the making of this video. If you'd like to contribute and appear in the credits in the future, my Patreon page is Godzilla Rex, and it's in the description below. I'd like to point out how in this particular case, the reason why his number of fighting styles is low is that the Marine Corps martial arts program is an incredibly comprehensive and robust CQC system that incorporates many techniques from many different fighting styles. So even though he demonstrated techniques from boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and others, these are all incorporated into the Marine Corps martial arts program. What do you think of the Punisher series? What other characters should I analyze next? Let me know in the comments below, subscribe for more awesome videos, and see you next time.